Good day and welcome to Online. My name is Hannah Nell and I serve as the youth pastor here at Church of the King. Today, I want to invite you to get connected. If it's your first, second, 10th, or 100th time that you are watching COTK online, I want to invite you in the spiritual family. You can do that by filling out the Connect card on our website or using the link down in the description box below. Today, I would also like to say thank you so much for your generosity. I want to thank you for sowing God's kingdom and trusting Him and see what He can do globally and locally. Today, you can give by texting the number available on the screen. You can also use our website or our app. Thank you.
Welcome to COTK. It is great to be with you today. I'm excited about the series Home for Christmas. And if I'm honest, I love the Christmas season and I love the Christmas story. Last week we talked about Joseph, and I want to read a portion of that because I've never really quite gotten over the fact that the creator of the universe came to his creation, and he came first as a baby. He could have just appeared, but he came as a baby. And it's not like he was born into a royal family or a wealthy, prominent, influential family. He was born into poverty. And I love it when we see in Matthew, this is what we looked at last week. In Matthew chapter 1, it says, "This is how Jesus, the Messiah, was born. His mother Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph, but before the marriage took place, while she was still a virgin, she became pregnant through the power of the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, to whom she was engaged, was a righteous man and did not want to disgrace her publicly. So he decided to break the engagement quietly. And as he considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. 'Joseph, son of David,' the angel said, 'don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child within her was conceived by the Holy Spirit, and she will have a son. And you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins.' And all this occurred to fulfill the Lord's message through his prophet. 'Look, the virgin will conceive a child, and she'll give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel,' which means God with us." And I hope that the wonder of Christmas is never lost on you, that you recognize God came to his creation. That's what Emmanuel means, that we see Isaiah prophesying it's going to be God with us, Emmanuel. God is going to be among us, and this is Jesus. But he came as this precious baby. He came into a human body with a human limitation. I don't know if we realize this, that Jesus is fully God, but he's also fully man. So there's limitations there. He experienced human life, but he also experienced human death. Why? Why did he do all this? Romans 5:8 said that God demonstrated his love towards us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He showed us that death isn't the end as he rose from the grave. And then he showed us that we can live a resurrected life as well. And this is what's so fascinating to me, is we also see he showed us the concept of spiritual family. In Matthew chapter 12, now this is later, in Matthew 1, we see Jesus is born, we see how he's born, but in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus is teaching. And while he's teaching, his disciples are there, and there's a large group of people around. In chapter 12, we see this in verses 46 through 50. It says, "As Jesus was speaking to the crowd, his mother and his brothers stood outside asking to speak to him." And this is what's interesting to me, because Jesus doesn't respond as we might think. So he's teaching, and then someone comes up to him and said, "Jesus, your mother and your brothers are standing outside. They want to speak to you." You would think Jesus would be like, "Oh, really?" But this is what he says. He says, Jesus asked, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" This is a really pertinent question, because Joseph wasn't his biological dad. And Mary was his mother, but he is the creator of all. Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? This is a very pointed question. Then he pointed to his disciples. He points to his closest followers and says, "Look, These are my mother and my brothers. I would imagine they'd be confused because Jesus is pointing now at these guys. That's my mama. That's my brothers. And like, brothers, maybe, I guess, I don't know. Like, what are you talking about, Jesus? And then Jesus explains himself. These are my mother and my brothers. And then in verse 50, he says this, anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Anyone who does the will. This is where the concept of spiritual family comes from. And listen, I know a lot of people have made that really weird and kind of cultish, but it's not that. It's recognizing that when we surrender our life to Jesus, when we surrender to him, and we say, Lord, my life is yours. I give all to you. I'm going to follow you. We enter into spiritual family. And that's what God has for us. Healthy, whole family as we have become healthy and whole because we've encountered him. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, and it's one that our church was founded on. You know, the founding verse that God gave us in planning the church was Isaiah 58:12, which says, those from among you will rebuild the ancient ruins. You'll raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the streets in which to dwell. But just after that was Psalms 68:6 that says this, God makes a home for the lonely. He leads out the prisoners into prosperity. I want you to know that Jesus came for people. And in fact, we know that in Luke 19, chapter 19, verse 10, Jesus says, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. Because Jesus is concerned with people. He's concerned with people coming to be a part of his family. And the way that you do that is you follow him. That's why he says, anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Now, he says he and the Father are one, but he's in this limited capacity for just a brief amount of eternity in a physical body. So he's saying, if you are following me and doing the will of my Father, which is him and he is, it gets a little bit, it's the Trinity. You know, it's like there's the three in one, and there's really just one. And anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. We can be a part of the family of God. And Jesus has a heart for people. Psalm 68:6, God makes a home for the lonely. Luke 19, the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. John 12:44-50, Jesus said, I didn't come to judge the world, but that the world through me might be saved. 1 Timothy 1:15, where it says that Jesus came to save sinners. That Matthew 20:28 says that Jesus says, the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. I want you to understand that home for Christmas, it's a heart issue. You've probably heard the saying, home is where the heart is. And my heart for you is that you surrender yours to him. Something happens when you have the heart of Jesus, when we have the heart of Jesus. Psalm 68:6, God makes a home for the lonely. He leads out the prisoners into prosperity. Only the rebellious dwell in a parched land. And I've found that a lot of Christians, they end up living in a parched land because I think it's because they don't understand that when you surrender your heart to Jesus, his heart should become yours. And you should have a heart for the lost, for the lonely, for the left out, for the sinners. Something happened in 1858 that rocked the world. It was the beginning of a great awakening, a tremendous revival. And it started outside of Chicago with one guy who had a radical encounter with the Lord. His name was Dwight. And Dwight had this unbelievable encounter with the Lord and gave his life to the Lord. And he starts meeting with some of his friends in a saloon that he bought. And next thing you know, these friends, they encounter Jesus and give their life to Christ as well. And then before you know it, they're bringing their friends, and this small saloon is packed all the time with people going to Sunday school. And he's teaching people how to follow Jesus. His name was Dwight Moody. And what happened in Illinois through Dwight Moody spread throughout all of America, all of Canada, and ultimately hopped across the pond to Europe, to Britain. And we see from 1858 to almost 1900, this massive wave where millions and millions and millions and millions of people came to know Christ, primarily because of three organizations. And the churches were full, they were overflowing. But first it was Dwight Moody and the Dwight Moody ultimately Institute, where he was teaching people how to follow Christ, but it started in a bar. The YMCA, that started in 1844, but in 1858, they were still around. They were just an organization of a few guys that got together in 1844 and were like, we want to see these young men in the rough areas of London, like, have a stable place to go, and we want to share Jesus with them. But in 1858, they connected with Dwight Moody, and then Dwight Moody went to speak, and everything began to change. And then the Salvation Army in 1865, as they joined up, and what happened there. And in each of these organizations, Dwight Moody and his organization, the YMCA and the Salvation Army, guess who they went after? They went after anyone who was lost and wandering, trying to figure things out. Anyone who was lonely, anybody who was left out. They were going to what would be considered the dregs of society and sharing the good news of Jesus. And it radically reshaped the world. So here's the question that I have. And the series is Home for Christmas. Home is where the heart is. And my question is, where's your heart? I have three simple questions. Do you make a place for the presence of God in your life? I may not be a Dwight Moody, but I want to do what God's called me to do and have a heart for him. But I'll never have a heart for him if I don't spend time seeking him, seeking his heart, seeking to know who he is, how he sees things, how he feels about where I am, how he sees the world. So many times we spend our time seeking his hands. God, what can you give me? Give me peace. Give me money. Give me security. Can we first seek his heart? Can we first seek his heart? When you begin to know him, you're grateful for him. My kids know this. To the one who is grateful, they will be given more. To the one who has no gratitude, that which they have will be taken away. And so many people, Psalm 68:6, God makes a home for the lonely. He leads out the prisoners into prosperity. Only the rebellious dwell in a parched land. And so many Christians are in a dry, parched land, and they don't recognize it's rebellion, not because they're shaking their fist at God, but because they're trying to get their significance, their security, their peace, their validation, their success from everything around them, not recognizing that it comes from the heart of God. So let's seek the heart of God and not worry about what he's going to put in our hands with his. So my question, do you have a heart for the presence of God? Do you make a place for the presence of God in your life? Here's the second question. Do you make a place for the people of God? I'm not just talking about church people. I'm not talking, let me just take, God has a heart for all people. Psalm 68:6, God makes a home for the lonely. He makes a home for the lonely. Do you make a place for people? For the lost, the lonely, the left out? You got to make a place. And let me just tell you, it's going to be messy because people are messy. My wife has a really big heart, and she's she's an amazing individual. She's also a little unique in a very good way, but she'll consistently and regularly go out of her way to be a blessing to those who she sees that are on the side of the road, homeless. She'll make little bags, give them food, go pray with them. And sometimes, you know what? It's a mess, and that can deter people. I remember one time she picked up a lady at Walmart. This lady had a bag of uh, uh, my son's here. He started to laugh. She had a Walmart bag and it was filled with cans, and the lady looked needy, and so she said, can I pray for you? Can I help you out?" And the lady said, "Can you give me a ride somewhere?" And so she jumps in my wife's vehicle, and then she pulls out one of the cans. It turned out it's canned air. She's sitting in the passenger seat, and she takes the canned air, huffs it in, and instantly passes out. And like my wife's freaking out and wondering what to do. And this went on repeatedly until she finally found a place she could bring. It was a mess. And she called me like, "I cannot believe this just happened, but I got to pray for her." Look, it's going to be a mess and it can be scary, but God's with you when you trust him. And like nobody wants the crazy person, but Jesus went to everyone. He went to the wealthy, the influential, the powerful. He went to the middle class who had jobs. He went to the lower class. My question is God, is his heart yours so that you're making a place not just for his presence, but for his people? That Jesus came to seek and save that which is lost. Christ came to save sinners. Like, it doesn't matter if they're wealthy and influential and powerful, if they're like normal middle class, or if they're crazy, because Jesus dealt with all of them. Do I genuinely have a heart for people? The degree to which I have a heart for people reflects the degree to which my heart is surrendered to God's. Do you make a place? Do you have a heart for the presence of God? You seeking his heart or just his hands? Do you have a heart for people? Do you have a heart for people? And if so, how's that playing out? Where's the practical? If you have faith, believing that God's called you to reach people because Jesus did, you're going to be able to show me the people that he's using you to reach. I'm not saying this condemningly. I'm saying this convictingly, that we're called to reach people. This is the last question. Who are we opening the door to in our life? Who am I opening the door to relationship with Christ? Who am I opening the door to relationship with me? In our church, who are we opening the door to? You can't just look at the pastor for that. It's all of us. Home is where the heart is. Where's our heart? It's our heart for the heart of God, spending time in his presence. It's our heart for people. And if so, who are we opening the door to? We have a pretty amazing country. I love our country and I love our state. I love Lake Charles. I love where I am. Yes, it's the one place I told the Lord I'd never go. And yet he sent me here. And while the geography is not the best, and maybe we have to close all our doors and windows and shut our ACs off every now and then because of the plants, you know what? It's got the best people on the face of the earth. And I firmly believe we're the best church ever. But is our heart right? Everybody loves to complain about politics in our country. What was the heart of our country? I mean, I can't go back in time and tell you, but I do know our history. Gosh, we were far from perfect. I know we've let some terrible things happen. We sowed so much destruction in the seeds of slavery that we allowed, and there were so many wrongs. But just like a person, there's wrongs and rights. Somewhere, we did some things really right. So much so that another country, France of all countries, gave us a gift in the Statue of Liberty. And at the base of the Statue of Liberty is a poem that was written by Emma Lazarus. I want to read that poem because at some point in history, by the way, this is right around the time of the Great Awakening, where God used Dwight Moody to transform the world. And our nation was known to have a heart for Christ, and I firmly believe it's coming back. The base of the Statue of Liberty is this poem written by Emma Lazarus. It's called The New Colossus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name is the mother of exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips. This was the heart of our country. She says next, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. That was the heart of our nation, that had just gone through the greatest revival in the history of our nation. And even other countries could see their heart for people, those who were tired and poor, huddled, yearning to breathe free, that were considered the wretched refuse of someone's teeming shore. And our country said, send us the homeless, tempest-tossed, because we'll open the door for them. Now we have churches that close theirs. Heart of God is for people. That should be our heart too. This was the heart of Jesus. This is the heart of the Father in sending His Son. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, His only Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And that should be our heart. It should be our homes, and should be our church, because it's who we are. And that is living out Jesus, because He loves and He gives, so shall we. Love you guys. God bless, and Merry Christmas.